about to go live. Pat said 30 seconds 2 minutes ago. There we go. There's our open. Yeah, it's Jason Martinez at the home studio. Brian Smith at PPG Paints Arena. Is it still PPG Paints Arena, Brian?
It is. Yes, it is. They can't name everything out here at PNC, so it's PPG Paints Arena still. Yes.
All right. So PPG Paint. What was it was the old Igloo, but now it's PPG Paints Arena.
Console Energy Center for a while. That was the time period where the Flyers owned this place, if you recall, right after it opened.
Okay.
Like eight in a row or something like that, and yeah, now here we are. So it's St. Patrick's Day, very early here. St. Patrick's Day, all over the city, parade and everything like that.
Well, I did some research and found out why they're celebrating it today. Do you want to know why?
Okay, because it's on
a Friday. The return of Pat Egan producing the program today.
Oh, that's St. Patrick.
Yes. He's a Patrick, but he ain't no saint.
No, nope, not at all.
Yeah, that's for sure. Let's get into it. Flyers Penguins today, 3:30 national televised game. But Bri, obviously, still the big story here today is what happened yesterday and the dismissal of Chuck Fletcher. Now you're on the road with the team, and when the team's on the road, I don't think you like to take care of business like that when you're on the road because so many people are out of the building and you want to get to press conferences and all availabilities and all that stuff, but that wasn't in the cards. It happens yesterday. Is there any kind of air around the team, a mood, or, John Tortorella, I know, spoke about it today, but what's the sense on the road there with the crew?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, it's not all that much different, I don't think, and nor should it be with a GM change at this juncture. I don't think it's certainly not going to have any effect on this game, and perhaps not even the rest of the season. We're purely speculating here in terms of why the timing was what it was, but the main impetus was that the NHL's GM meetings are in Florida starting on Monday, and so I think there was an urge there to want to get Danny there and involved in those, and so that would be a reason to do it with the timing that it was done. It was a bit of a surprise, I think, to everybody involved. The team found out the way you and I did on social media, and so there was no advance notice to the players of any kind. And at the time, the team was in North Carolina still. They were still in Raleigh. So it happened in the morning, flew here to Pittsburgh. Danny met the team here in Pittsburgh. They had a brief meeting last night just to kind of, set the stage, I guess. It's an elephant in the room until you have some sort of sit down. And so Danny met with the team very briefly last night, and then everybody, kind of went about their business. So, it's, again, going to be a bit of an anticlimactic thing right now just because of the time of the season that it is. But, certainly reasons to do it now. And like you said, there has not been any sort of formal media availability yet. We're thinking sometime in the next couple of days, once the team's back to Philadelphia, that might happen. But, again, for this game here today, it's, fairly business as usual.
Yeah, in a lot of ways right now, from a hockey standpoint, nothing changes. Nothing changes on the ice. There's not all of a sudden different players available or anything like that. But, long-term and obviously short-term as well, once this season does conclude, there'll be a fair amount of changes as well. And, I thought it was really interesting, Bri, because they're separating the two roles of president of hockey operations and general manager. Each one of those jobs is a job for one man, maybe two men in today's climate and pro sports. But having one man do both jobs is very difficult to do because you got to manage up and you got to manage down. So they're going to separate those two. So it's going to come with a bit of a new organizational structure, which a lot of teams are implementing these days. Brendan Shanahan and Kyle Dubas is a great example in Toronto. You have Brian Burke and Ron Hextall out there in Pittsburgh, and many teams all over the league. Jeff Gorton and Kent Hughes in Montreal, same kind of situation there. So I thought that was an interesting element that they're not hiring one position; they're hiring two.
And that's the way this sport is going, and it's this sport has evolved over the years. You go back 50 years, 45 years to where there used to be a coach, and then in 1974 the Flyers were the first team to hire an assistant coach in Mike Nicola. And can you imagine today one man trying to coach the team with no help? I mean, that's how it evolves, and that's because there's so many demands on a head coach in terms of dealing with the media, dealing with the business side of things. Occasionally, there's a lot of requests for the head coach to go talk to season ticket members, to go do special things for the organization. So the same kind of thing exists in upper management now. You have a general manager who is mostly focused on hockey operations, running the team, making moves, things like that. And then you have a president of hockey operations who oversees that, but at the same time is probably the main conduit to ownership. And that's the way it is here in Pittsburgh, like you mentioned, with Ron Hextall as general manager. Of course, we're more than familiar with him. Brian Burke is the conduit to, at the time, Ron Burkle and Mario Lemieux, but now it's Fenway Sports Group. So, it's definitely worth two jobs at this point, and the Flyers are just going to join that trend here over the course of the summer.
Yeah, the other element in the press release that I found a very interesting line, and the quote from Dave Scott, he said, "In the coming days, we will begin the process of restructuring the hockey operations department by separating the president and general manager positions," which we just talked about. We view this as a crucial or critical opportunity to not only reestablish the standard of excellence that our fans expect, but also to bring new energy, accountability, and strategic vision to our organization. And and I agree with that. That this is an opportunity to really move forward into today's NHL. Maybe there's some old habits and still kind of part of the equation, but in today's NHL, you got to use all the tools that are there. You got to have great amenities. You have to have some kind of reliance on analytics and all of those things, and sports medicine. And if you're going to have success, you need to have all those things, and they're going to need a strategic vision that's as thorough as it gets.
And there's a lot of buzzwords in there. Some of that stuff had already started to happen here in Philadelphia. There was the restructuring of the team's medical staff over the summer, and it wasn't just a couple people in, a couple people out. They completely revamped the way it was done here with Ian McEwen coming in and being the head of the department, and various things working underneath him. So there's a little bit of that going on. Flyers had already greatly expanded their analytics, and there was actually a story in the Inquirer about Danny and Ian Anderson, the head of analytics here, working directly with Travis Konechny on some things over the summer. That sort of stuff is already in motion. The one perception I think that's out there that I think is overblown is that there's still too much influence from people that have been around the organization for years and years and years. I don't think there's anything to that really, or at least not as much as it's played out to be. And there's another article just beating it to death today in the Athletic, and Bob Clark is playing golf in Florida this weekend. He's not sitting in the offices orchestrating anything to do with the front office. Paul Holmgren is playing golf in Yardley and working with spending time with his grandkids. There's not this overarching hierarchy anymore of people standing over everything, making all these moves like some people seem to think that there is. So all this stuff is already starting here, and this is just going to be this is just going to be an opportunity for there to be more of this happening this time on the hockey side. I will always believe that that Chuck got basically dealt a raw hand here. I'm not saying I disagree with the move, but I'm just saying over the last few years, there were a lot of things that happened that were out of his control, and that would have been very difficult for anybody to fix. He just happened to be the guy sitting in the chair at the time. So, hopefully he'll land on his feet. He'll have other opportunities moving forward. But it was, I think John Tortorella said it best. You can catch this interview on our YouTube channel if you want to see it. That a very, very good hockey man lost the job, and a very, very good hockey guy gets the job, and that's how this business works. And so a lot of folks are sorry to see Chuck go, but are very excited at the same time, if that makes sense, to work with Danny and move this thing forward.
No doubt about it. And a lot of things, the flat cap world was difficult for a lot of GMs around the league, and based on their pay structure with contracts and RFAs and everything at certain times, Flyers were a team that obviously had a very difficult time dealing with the flat cap and how things move forward. We're still at flat cap, unfortunately, and we'll maybe see that escalate this summer. I know Danny wants that thing to escalate.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure, I'll be campaigning for it next week. Well, I was talking with somebody here in Pittsburgh on my way up to the elevator today, that for me, the whole thing kind of started snowballing when Matt Niskanen decided to retire. That was completely unexpected. Flyers were not preparing for that. It happened in October of 2020 at a time where nobody had any idea how the future was going to proceed. I mean, it's easy to look back on the situation in hindsight and say, should have done this, should have done that. But when the Flyers lost Matt Niskanen, it really just affected everything else at the same time. And, they just weren't able to go out and snap their fingers and replace him because if you recall, he was an extremely effective defenseman at a pretty good cap number.
Yeah.
And with that flat cap and everything going on at that time, I mean, it was much, much more difficult to, again, just go out and replace him immediately. So, that for me kind of started it. And then, there were other things, we've talked about it here on these shows for a while now. Certain guys plateauing in their development during COVID for reasons that I think had to do with the off-ice situation that the NHL was in and all that stuff. And they've all started to grow again, and eventually this cap is going to kind of resurface, and things are going to come together. But it'll just be under a new administration.
Yeah, new regime, and Danny's got the interim tag now. We'll see if that's removed, who the president is, or is Danny the president, and they hire a GM. I don't know, but it's certainly pivotal times for the Flyers. The task will not be easy, but nothing worth it is. So let's take our first time out here on the pregame show. Flyers, Penguins today, national television out in Pittsburgh. That's Brian Smith, Jason Martinez at the home studio. We'll take a time out. Flyers Game Day brought to you by Betway on the Flyers Broadcast Network. And we are back live. It is pregame as the Flyers are in Pittsburgh to take on the Penguins. Final game of a 3-game road trip. A trip that started in Tampa with a 5-2 loss, if I recall, and then the 1-0 loss against Carolina. So just the 2 goals to show for in the 2 games. They're going to need to put the puck in the net today Pittsburgh a team fighting for every single point they can get, Bry, to lock up a playoff spot.
Yeah. I mean, we've heard all the consternation going on in Philadelphia as far as the fans. It is just the same here. They're not happy here, and they're a team that's on the cusp of a playoff spot. There's been a lot of heat put on this team by the fan base, but right now they are in that last wild card spot. They have a couple of games in hand on Florida, which is the next team behind them. So if they can take care of their business, they actually have games in hand on the team in front of them, too, the Islanders. So if they can take care of their business here in Pittsburgh, they should be in good shape. But that will remain to be seen. This is again a Flyers team that cannot score as of late, and that's just the way it is. If you take away that empty netter against Detroit, they haven't scored more than 2 goals a game since the Calgary game, which was the third game of that last road trip. So scoring has dried up. It's probably not very surprising given Travis Konecny being out of the lineup affects not just the fact that Travis isn't there, but it affects all the guys that played around him as well. So, there's a lot going on there, and we'll hopefully be able to see them break out of that today. If not today, then soon.
Yeah, Penguins come into the game 64 games played, 32, 22, and 10, 74 points. Right now in wild card 2, as you alluded to, and they would get the Boston Bruins in round number 1. I was thinking maybe you got to get your way to wild card number 1. You draw the Carolina Hurricanes. I don't know how much better that actually is, but the Penguins on their home ice this year, pretty good. 17, 9, and 5 home ice, 15, 13, and 5 on the road this season. Flyers 65 games played, 24, 30, and 11, 59 points, 7th spot in the Metro, 2-7-1 in their last 10. Penguins, by the way, in their last 10 are 5-4-1. And, it's probably going to be a year without the Washington Capitals and Alex Ovechkin in the playoffs. It'd be really bizarre if there's no Ovechkin, no Crosby.
I mean, that's just that's today's NHL, right? And they've done this on purpose, built this parity around the league that if you're, and that's for me another reason I think Flyers fans can have hope is that granted, Jersey and the Rangers have had a good bit of luck in being able to turn things around as quickly as they can as they have with their lottery picks and stuff. But everybody's right there in this league. If you look at the standings, I mean, the top 13 out of the 15 teams or 16 teams in the East are, not separated by a whole heck of a lot. Boston is pulling away, Carolina's pulling away, but after that, I mean, it's only 23 points separates 11 teams. So everybody's right there. The regular season games matter more than they ever have, and that's if it comes at the expense of Washington and Pittsburgh missing in the same year, so be it. But that's where we are today.
Yeah, it would be amazing. I think it's been since 05 or 04 that has happened, where neither of those teams or Ovechkin or Crosby have not been in the playoffs. So that's a long time. That's a long run. We're in 2023 here, for goodness sake. Flyers in Pittsburgh to take on the Penguins. Carter Hart getting back in the net today, Bry?
Carter's back to starting. I don't think there's any lineup changes other than that. Personnel will be the same. The lines are going to be different, and we'll talk about that, I'm sure, in a bit. But for the most part, everything here is going to look the same as they did the other night against Carolina. Tyson Forrester is drawing rave reviews for his debut, and they're excited to see another one from him here today.
I like the terminology you used in regards to Forrester in his first game. He looked good. He looked patient. He didn't look overwhelmed. But to sum it up, he looked ready.
Yeah. And again, it's a different situation here this year than it would normally be, in that they want the Phantoms to make the playoffs, to go on a playoff run in the American Hockey League. So if he goes back there, I don't know when. If he goes back when we get back to Philadelphia, if he goes back later this week, he's not going back because he didn't look good up here. He's going back because they want to solidify the playoff run for the Lehigh Valley Phantoms and let him play out the year down there. And, judging by what we saw the other night, I certainly think we'll see him as part of the future here moving forward, starting next season.
Yeah, the other night he was on a line with Noah Cates and Scott Lawton, and he was on that wing with those two guys, two very responsible players. It really affected his playing time in the first period because the Flyers had about 5.5 minutes of PK time, and Cates Lawton are always out on the PK, so he only saw 2.5 minutes, but he saw about 11.5 minutes after that. And John Tortorella really liked what he saw out of Tyson Foerster, had him out there late in the game, and I'm just waiting for that opportunity to see him on a power play kind of in that Ovechkin spot, just absolutely bomb one because he has got a howitzer for a shot and doesn't waste any time getting it off. It is a big one and it is heavy. I've asked a couple of the Flyers goaltenders about it, and it jumps on you real quick. So that's his greatest asset. Flyers need scoring. I'd like to see him get on the power play and work a play to Forster to use that shot.
Yeah, and let's be honest here. It's not to put a bunch of pressure on Tyson Forrester, but the Flyers need some of these top picks to pan out and he is going to be first. Obviously, Cam York is here, and he's finding his way. But Joel Farabee, the year before that, of course, is here and finding his way. The Flyers are in need of some fresh young talent, and the best place for that to come is recent high draft picks for them. And hopefully we've got they've got a few guys that are looking really. Ronnie Attard is one of them. They've got a few others that they're waiting to see how they go, and then Cutter Gauthier is finishing. He might be finishing up his college career. He's finishing up the season with in Boston with BC, and has looked great there. So he might be in the mix next year as well. So they're just need to see some of these guys pan out, and if Tyson is ready to make the jump, that should make everybody feel a lot better.
Yeah, and he won't be rushed. He was drafted back in 2020, 23rd overall. And that could turn out to be a really nice draft. Tyson Forster in the first round, Emil Andrea in the second round, and he may be coming over now that his season has ended over in Sweden and getting some time with the Phantoms. And he looks like a really nice young player as well, nice D-man. Zaid Wisdom, I think, has been a little back and forth, was even down in the East Coast League this year, but Elliot Denoye was taken in the fifth round of that draft, and he's going to be back in the lineup once again tonight, too.
And Bill Meltzer and I are going to sit down probably Monday and bring you another prospect pipeline, so you'll be able to find that next week on the Flyers podcast channels. But the Phantoms are in a 3-3 this weekend. It's a big weekend for them, and we're going to just kind of take a look at where they are as far as how things go at the end of this weekend, and from there, how some of the guys that are developing, what their next step is. A big win Friday for Lehigh Valley over Wilkes-Barre Scranton to start the weekend. They've got another contest later tonight, and I believe they're also in action tomorrow afternoon. So once we get through that weekend, we'll be taking a little bit of a reset on them, and you can find that next week.
Let's take one more time out here on Flyers Game Day, brought to you by Betway. We'll come back. We'll give you the line combinations for this game, and we'll take you up to the countdown to face-off with Tim Saunders and Steve Coates. It's Brian Smith, Jason Martinez. We're back after this on the Flyers Broadcast Network. That's right. We're back. Flyers and the Penguins today from PPG Paints Arena in Pittsburgh. Flyers going to have this game today, return home tonight, and then going to kick off a season high 7-game homestand. Oh my goodness, that's a long one. I don't recall one that long, Brian. All my years doing games, but get home, get the laundry done, get the house cleaned. You're going to be there a while.
I don't think that there has been one that didn't involve some sort of break in between, like an all-star break or something like that. It's very rare that you see that many in a row, but we're certainly going to hopefully see the Flyers take full advantage of it. They've got some tough opponents coming in during that trip, but they've also got an opportunity to get some points and move ahead. They actually play 8 of their next 9 at home. There's an out and back to Ottawa, but there won't be another extended road trip until after the 1st of April. They'll actually be right back here in Pittsburgh to start the final trip of the year. So, again, it's an opportunity, I think, for the Flyers to get home, get some practice time in. I mean, it's also not too demanding of a schedule in terms of back-to-backs or anything. There's just the one in there on the 17th and 18th. Be a tough weekend, but they'll get an opportunity here maybe to they got the 4 recalls still. The 2 recalls they're using right now are emergency recalls, so they might have an opportunity there to pull a phantom up for a game, take a look at a Bobby Brink or a Ronnie Addard or something like that, send them right back. So it'll be a good time of the year to be home.
Yeah, no doubt. And the other thing too is you mentioned emergency recalls. Brendan Lemieux and Wade Allison banged up. They're not in the lineup today. And Tony DeAngelo serving game 2 of his 2-game suspension for what took place down in Tampa. Let's get to the line combinations. Here we go. The Flyers top line, Morgan Frost centering Scott Lawton and Owen Tippett. Interesting combination. Hayes back in the middle, centering Joel Farabee and Tyson Forster. Noah Cates centering James Van Riemsdyk and Tanner Lazinski. Elliot Denoye centering Nick Deslauriers and Kiefer Bellows. Good luck with that one, Tim. Denoye and Deslauriers. Then your D pairs, Sanheim and Ristolainen, Provorov and York on the right side again, Sealer and Braun. Carter Hart gets the start in net, and DeSmith goes for the Pittsburgh Penguins. So no changes in personnel, but quite a few changes when it comes to who's playing with who and who's going to jump over the board together.
I mean, to some extent, again, John Tortorella doesn't necessarily view wins and losses as the top priority right now with this team, but at the same time, he knows that the guys need to get wins just from a morale perspective. They just got to keep the energy going. And so really it's like they're taking the folks that are, the closest to being on right now scoring-wise and just shoving them up at the top of the lineup there. You've got Lawton, who's obviously the responsible defensive guy that'll jump into anything, with Morgan Frost and Owen Tippett, who hopefully will be able to make something happen between the 2 of them. And then, you put Tyson Forster on that second line with a couple of bona fide NHLers to see how he can play out. And, it'll be interesting to see if this gets the Flyers offense going.
Yeah, I mean, they played 65 games. So what's that? 17 games remain, including this one. And, I think we're reaching that line of demarcation on 2 guys. Number 1, Travis Konechny in his return, where it becomes a kind of it doesn't make sense to bring him back. He's had a really good year. He's over a point per game player, 54 points in 52 games. And then the other one, obviously, is a guy we haven't seen since December of 21, and that's Sean Couturier.
Yeah, and there was a little bit of discussion too. I mean, apparently, when you see the guys come back, the hope is that you might see Couturier and Konechny at least practicing with the team. There is still way up in the air as to whether either of them will play in a game again this season. But just in terms of a step of getting them back and getting them reacclimated with the team and stuff like that, it sounds like that is around the corner. That'll be another nice thing about this homestand, because when you're on the road, guys like that aren't with the team. And so you go back home and you're able to start at least having those guys around. They can, Couturier has been skating on his own for quite some time, but not with the team. He may not participate in everything, but to participate in some stuff would be a step forward for him. I am sure for him, he would like to get into a game before the year is out, just to, so it's not a complete off season before he plays again. But it would be detrimental to him if they were just going to let him do it because he wanted to. They'll make sure that he's certainly healthy and ready to go and can't damage anything if and when he does get in. But that's all remains to be seen.
Yeah, I would have loved to seen him get in there, and I think it'd be good for him to get in there, play, and know that he can do it again.
Yeah,
you haven't played that long. Yeah.
I mean, you don't want to. We've talked about it. Guys making their NHL debut before the close of a season, so they can have that in their head going through the offseason. At this point, it's the same for Coots. That you don't want to go through the entire offseason wondering how your body's going to react when you get to training camp. You'd like to get an idea of it here in April sometime. So maybe we'll be able to see him do that.
Yeah, to know that your body can hold up under the rigors of a game and take contact and play at full speed and with the scoreboard plugged in and all of that. So we'll see if that comes to fruition. I think we're getting to that line now where you kind of go, okay, we got to make this determination, and it's not likely, but we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a lot of changes coming up with this team in the offseason, and it's got to be addition by subtraction to some extent. So you need every bit of information that you have available to you as far as who you need to keep, who you're able to maybe move out for other pieces to come back in. And so, knowing where those guys are at would certainly help. They have a good idea on Couturier, obviously. It's much less murky than it was last year at this time. So, again, it's just a matter of being able to chart your path forward with the most information you possibly can.
Yeah, for sure. And, the other part, too, he's such an important piece, Couturier. He does so many little things like face-offs. We've talked about probably ad nauseum this season, and that's been an area without him that's a real deficiency for this team, and that's a killer when you're on the PK and the other team gets possession of the puck, and it's a killer when you're on the power play and you got to start from behind your net.
That's the prime example of what happens when you lose a guy and you have the snowball effect. The Flyers are one of the best face-off teams in the league for several years because they had Claude Giroux, Sean Couturier, and Scott Lawton all running like around 60%, but Lawton was running at 60% as a third-line center. And now when he comes in and has to take first-line center face-offs, that's not as easy as taking third-line center face-offs.
You get Bergeron.
Yeah, so now that's when the snowball effect starts to happen. And it happens anytime somebody comes out of the lineup. There's been times in the past where a guy like Lawton comes out of the lineup or something like that. Nobody thinks much of it, but everything goes to crap because him missing forces other guys into that role, and then it's just a snowball effect.
I've always said next man up is a really nice saying. It's it's an opportunity, but it's oftentimes next man up. Yeah, next man up a lot of times is I want the man that was up, not the next man. He was there for a reason. So the Flyers in Pittsburgh today to take on the Pens. They'll wrap up this 3-game road trip looking to come out and do it and come away with a win. You get Casey DeSmith in this game. Jari not going, and it'll be Carter Hart versus Casey DeSmith, and Flyers, boy, they need to score some goals, and we'll see if they're able to do that today here in Pittsburgh. Only 2 goals on this trip so far in the first 2 games, and Carolina held them to 1. Good defensive structure. They'll need to do that against the Pens here today as well. All right, we got Tim Saunders. We've got Steve Coates. They are in Pittsburgh, in the Iron City. And they've got the countdown to face-off, followed by all the first period action, and that's right after this on the BetRivers.com Flyers Broadcast Network.